Matthew nearly keeled over as his older brother hauled him out of the garage door, tossing him effortlessly onto the weedy grass. John squared up like a boxer, shouting something about the family business. Matthew sized up his chances and kept his distance, sparring with words. This isn't about the shop. This is about your weird Don Corleone fantasy you've had cooking since we were kids. You can't stand the idea of not being the big man. Paul DeLorenzo's sons weren't physically arguing over his casket, but they might as well have been. Blocks from where they had laid their father to rest a week ago, they stood in a side yard beside the family's auto mechanic and machine shop and below the old apartment where they had both grown up. Their father's lawyer had just finished reading the will. John let loose like a hurricane. He'd been bottling again. I just knew you'd pull something like this. You start reading some weird dead Russians in college and you come home with this crazy fucking co-op bullshit before Dad's corpse is even cold. How dare you? This is worse than a union. At least I know what the hell a union is and how to deal with them. You see that sign? It says DeLorenzo's. It's our name and our reputation on the line. If other guys want a better deal, they can work someplace else. When your name's on the shop, you don't have that option. Matthew smirked. We can always rename it. John growled. We shouldn't have to. The place belongs to the family. Think of Mom. Think of Emily. Matthew was stunned. John clearly hadn't taken anything in after his hopes of being the big boss had gotten dashed. You haven't even read the proposal. There would be plenty in our shares to take care of Mom and Emily, too. That's no reason to break up Dad and Grandpa's legacy. Matt sighed, closed the distance in a stride, and put a hand on John's shoulder. He locked eyes with his older brother. John, you go bowling with the other mechanics. Cookouts on the 4th of July. The kids go to playgroup together. The Relay for Life team. Dad always said the people who worked for us were family. Well, yeah, but he didn't mean family. It was a cop-out, and John's tone showed that he knew it. Matt pressed on. He made time for every wedding, every birth, every funeral. He didn't have to. That was just Dad's way. Yeah, it was. John thought this over for a long minute. Finally, he broke his silence. So, he got the idea from you, but he really put it in his will independently. Matt groaned. That's what I've been trying to tell you, you doofus. He was imitating their father, and they both grinned with the bitter nostalgia. John exhaled slowly and said, Explain it to me again. Matt explained the plans that he and Paul had made over the last months of the old man's life. John listened, first grudgingly, then with mounting curiosity. He really got excited when he saw the graphs showing their potential productivity, and doubly so at the thought of spreading out some of the administrative busywork, the bane of his existence currently. He looked up from the will to his brother with a new degree of respect, with a bitter sting of self-recrimination as he remembered how hot-headed he'd been and his misunderstanding of their father. That evening, the crew and their families came by for a barbecue. Matt recognized Big Al Santini, a mechanic who had trained under Paul and worked there since the brothers were in elementary school, Ray and Martina Velasquez, whose son and daughter immediately ran off to play with John's youngest, and Darrell Henderson, who had been Paul's last apprentice before going full-time. Most brought covered side dishes, desserts, salads, or drinks. The DeLorenzo's supplied the main course, a giant grilled porchetta, and the venue, the big patio behind the shop, with its above-ground pool and fire pit. As their guests served one another and Matt sat down with his mom and sister, John tapped his glass for silence. Our old man was a hell of a guy. He taught us everything we know, and a lot of you can say the same. He also had a great sense for business, and he kept this place running all his days, since he got it from his folks. He didn't need or want all the credit. He always knew he never could have done it alone. My brother had the balls to remind me of that, and to be honest, made me want to bust his nose. He delivered it like one of his stand-up bits. Ha ha, only serious. One other thing my brother reminded me of is that our old man thought of us all as a family, And not like some commercial or Hallmark card. He really meant it, you know? He grew up in this neighborhood. He saw what its people did for his folks, and I guess it stayed with him. And he wanted to make sure that the family business was really run for the whole family. After a lifetime of work and a bunch of research, he decided to ask us in his will to reorganize DeLorenzo's and run it as a co-op. Matt and me are going to take a bit of a pay cut, but the rest of you will get bigger paychecks and an equal vote in how we run the place. We all work here, and if we do what my old man was hoping, we'll all own it together. Matt helped Paul put together a great plan, and we'll go over the fine details of the proposal on Monday, but for now, what do you say? There was a moment's stunned hesitation before Big Al stood up and began clapping. One by one, the rest of the crew joined in. Some were clearly a bit confused, and Matt spent the rest of the evening fielding questions from Ray and some of the younger workers he'd met at the funeral. It was a night of palpable possibilities in the air, and the party went on long into the night. DeLorenzo's voted unanimously for the co-op on that Monday, and the papers were signed immediately. To Matt, it felt like he could see the neighborhood blooming all that summer, as everybody began taking home the extra money, treating themselves, helping one another, getting little projects done they hadn't had the time or cash for before. Big Al's ancient Thunderbird that hadn't seen the road in decades got its much-needed overhaul, and it graced every car show within 50 miles that summer. Ray redid his kitchen and backyard, complete with the garden his kids had been begging for, and everyone in the neighborhood got more summer squash and cucumbers than they knew what to do with. Darrell surprised his younger brother with a trip to robotics camp. Elijah came home that August, covered in bug bites and flying a handmade quadcopter. The wonders didn't stop there. The shop itself was flourishing. The announcement of the co-op had gotten them some great press in several different papers, as well as some less than complimentary coverage from right-wing shock jocks and YouTubers. This mostly created more press, more sympathy, and even more business, and the trolls gave up on them without much fuss. The organizers of the Labor Day parade dropped off an invitation in person at the shop. The workers had voted through some necessary reinvestments, and soon the shop had relationships with local technical schools, exchanging teaching gigs and apprenticeships. Matt even convinced John to read some Murray Bookchin, though John had drawn the line at weird Russians.